A weathered limestone entrance stands high in the Ethiopian highlands, its surface polished by centuries of hands, carrying ancient manuscripts into quiet churches. The stone is rough beneath the fingers, darkened by rain, sun, and incense smoke that has drifted through these doorways for generations. Inside, parchment pages, preserved in the Ge'ez language, still contain a book that disappeared from most Bibles long ago. Not a modern discovery, not a recent invention, a text copied by scribes, protected by monks, and read by communities that never abandoned it. While many people have never opened its pages, the Book of Enoch survived across centuries, crossing deserts, kingdoms, and empires before reaching the modern world. Yet the words inside have continued to raise the same unsettling question. Why did one ancient text devote so much attention to what happens just before a human life comes to an end? Again and again, its descriptions focus on heavenly beings, appointed watchers, and moments when the boundary between life and death becomes far more organized than most people imagine. The picture it presents is not one of chaos. It is one of order. Every movement appears assigned. Every action seems recorded. Every soul follows a path already understood long before it reaches its destination. According to the text, nothing about death happens by accident. The Book of Enoch occupies a remarkable place in religious history. It was widely known during the centuries surrounding the Second Temple period and was respected by many early Jewish communities. Fragments of the work were later discovered among the manuscripts preserved in the caves near the Dead Sea, confirming that copies of the text circulated long before the rise of medieval Christianity. Even more striking, the New Testament Epistle of Jude directly quotes a prophecy attributed to Enoch, showing that at least part of the work was familiar to some of the earliest followers of Jesus. Yet despite that influence, the complete book gradually disappeared from most Christian traditions while remaining part of the biblical canon of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. That unusual journey has fascinated historians, theologians, and archaeologists alike. It is not simply the survival of an ancient manuscript that captures attention. It is the world the manuscript describes, a world filled with heavenly counsels, appointed messengers, carefully measured judgments, and invisible activity taking place alongside ordinary human life. Among all of those passages, one theme quietly appears again and again. Angels are rarely presented as passive observers. Instead, they carry responsibilities. Some deliver messages, some record human actions, others guide the righteous, announce judgment, or carry out tasks assigned by divine authority. The Book of Enoch repeatedly portrays heaven as an ordered kingdom where every being has a purpose, and every event unfolds according to a larger design. That pattern has led generations of readers to ask whether the text hints at something even more specific, whether, before every human death, heavenly messengers perform responsibilities that most people never notice. The descriptions remain mysterious, often expressed through symbolic language and vivid visions, rather than straightforward explanation. Yet they invite careful attention because they present death not as an isolated event, but as part of an unseen process already underway, long before the final breath is taken. Over the next several minutes, we'll examine what the Book of Enoch actually says, how its ancient descriptions have been interpreted across history, and why its remarkable survival continues to inspire debate among scholars and believers alike. If forgotten biblical literature and ancient manuscript discoveries fascinate you, this journey begins where those weathered limestone steps still stand today, guarding pages that have remained remarkably unchanged through the passing centuries. But here's what makes this stranger. The Book of Enoch never treats the unseen world as something distant or disconnected from everyday human life. Instead, every vision pulls the reader closer to the idea that heaven and earth operate alongside one another, separated by a boundary that is invisible, yet constantly active. As Enoch continues through his journeys, he is repeatedly led by angels who do not appear confused or uncertain about their purpose. Every destination has already been prepared. Every encounter follows a precise order. Mountains of crystal, rivers of fire, chambers of judgment, and places reserved for the souls of the dead are described with remarkable consistency, as though Enoch is being shown an established system rather than a symbolic dream. The message is subtle but unmistakable. According to the text, nothing about the transition from earthly life to eternity is left to chance. One section describes angels who keep careful records of human actions, while another introduces heavenly figures assigned to carry out specific responsibilities under divine authority. Throughout these passages, the same pattern continues to emerge. Heaven is presented as an ordered kingdom where every messenger has a role, every command has a purpose, and every event unfolds according to a design that already exists. Enoch himself is never portrayed as directing these events. He is only an observer, guided from one place to another so he can witness how the unseen realm functions beyond human sight. That perspective becomes increasingly important because the text never encourages fear for its own sake. Instead, it emphasizes accountability, order, and preparation. Life on Earth appears temporary, but the unseen world is described as structured, permanent, and already in motion. As Enoch's journey continues, he is shown places where the souls of the departed await the final judgment. These descriptions are among the most discussed passages in the entire book because they suggest that death is not portrayed as immediate reward or punishment, but as the beginning of another stage within a much larger divine plan. Different groups are separated according to their condition, each awaiting the appointed time when justice will be fully revealed. The imagery is vivid yet restrained. There are no chaotic scenes or random events. Everything unfolds according to an established order that the angels already understand. That repeated emphasis has led many readers throughout history to wonder whether these heavenly messengers are involved not only after death, but also in the moments leading up to it. While the Book of Enoch does not describe a single ritual performed before every death, it consistently portrays angels as active servants, carrying out God's purposes during humanity's journey from this life to the next. This theme becomes even more significant when viewed alongside other ancient Jewish writings that speak of angels as messengers, guardians, and witnesses to human lives. Together, these traditions reflect a worldview in which the unseen realm is never idle. Instead, it remains closely connected to human history, even when its activity cannot be directly observed. Whether Enoch is describing literal events, visionary experiences, or symbolic revelations has been debated for centuries, but the central idea remains remarkably consistent. Human beings may experience death as a sudden and deeply personal event, yet the Book of Enoch invites readers to imagine it within a far larger framework, one in which divine order extends beyond the limits of earthly understanding. As Enoch watches these visions unfold, he is not encouraged to speculate recklessly about hidden mysteries. He is urged to recognize that the visible world is only one part of a reality far greater than the eye can see, and that every human life ultimately unfolds before a heaven where nothing is forgotten, nothing is overlooked, and every moment is known. As Enoch's journey moves deeper into the heavenly visions, his attention shifts from the places where souls wait to the authority that governs every part of creation. The text repeatedly describes a universe operating under divine command, where angels are not independent powers, but servants carrying out responsibilities assigned to them. Some are entrusted with delivering messages, others oversee elements of the natural world, still others stand before the throne, praising God and executing his judgments when commanded. The descriptions are detailed enough to leave the impression that every task has been carefully assigned. Nothing appears random. Nothing suggests confusion. Instead, the unseen realm is presented as a kingdom defined by structure, purpose, and obedience. For Enoch, Witnessing this order becomes just as important as witnessing the visions themselves, because it reveals that history unfolds according to a plan far larger than human understanding. One of the most striking themes in the Book of Enoch is the contrast between faithful angels and those known as the Watchers. Early in the text, the Watchers abandon the responsibilities given to them and descend to the earth, where they violate the boundaries established by God. Their actions introduce corruption, violence, and forbidden knowledge into the human world. The consequences are immediate and far-reaching. Rather than celebrating their power, the book presents their rebellion as the beginning of profound disorder. They are eventually confronted by divine judgment, bound until the appointed time, and separated from the authority they once possessed. This contrast is central to Enoch's message. The faithful angels continue to fulfill their duties in perfect obedience, while the rebellious watchers serve as a warning of what happens when heavenly authority is rejected. The difference between the two groups reinforces the book's broader picture of an ordered creation in which obedience preserves harmony and rebellion produces chaos. Against that backdrop, Enoch repeatedly encounters angels who guide him through scenes that emphasize preparation rather than surprise. They explain what he is seeing, direct his movements, and reveal that events unfolding on earth are already understood in heaven. This perspective shapes the way the book approaches life and death. Human beings experience time moment by moment, often uncertain about what lies ahead. The heavenly realm described by Enoch, however, appears to operate with complete knowledge of God's purposes. From that perspective, the end of an earthly life is not an interruption to the divine plan, but part of it. The text never encourages readers to believe that angels act independently or invent ceremonies of their own. Instead, every action they perform reflects obedience to God's will. That distinction is important because it places ultimate authority not in the angels themselves, but in the one who sends them. As these visions unfold, Enoch also hears repeated calls to righteousness, humility, and perseverance. The revelations he receives are never presented merely to satisfy curiosity about hidden things. They are intended to shape the way people live in the present. The certainty of divine judgment, the reality of accountability, and the promise that justice will ultimately prevail form the foundation of the entire work. For many readers across the centuries, this combination of vivid imagery and moral instruction has made the Book of Enoch one of the most compelling texts from the ancient world. Whether describing heavenly courts, the fate of the watchers, or the ordered activity of God's faithful messengers, the book consistently points to the same conclusion. History is moving toward a purpose established by God long before human beings became aware of it. Every vision, every warning, and every glimpse into the unseen realm serves to remind the reader that what happens on earth is only part of a much greater reality unfolding beyond human sight. As Enoch's visions continue, the focus expands beyond individual lives and turns toward the future of the entire world. The book describes a sequence of events that begins with human choices but ultimately reaches a moment when all creation stands before divine justice. Kingdoms rise and fall, generations come and go, yet the heavenly perspective never changes. Time moves steadily toward an appointed conclusion already known to God. Enoch is shown that history is not an endless cycle without direction. Instead, every age contributes to a larger purpose that has existed from the beginning. This theme appears repeatedly throughout the text, linking the fate of individuals with the destiny of nations, and reminding the reader that no act of faithfulness or injustice remains hidden forever. The message is consistent. Human beings often judge events by what they can see in the present, while the heavenly realm views every moment as part of a complete and unfolding design. Among the most memorable sections of the Book of Enoch are the visions that describe the coming judgment and the hope of restoration. Enoch speaks of a future when wrongdoing will no longer remain unanswered, and when those who have endured faithfully will witness the triumph of God's justice. These passages use vivid imagery drawn from mountains, stars, rivers, and the heavens themselves, creating scenes that feel immense in scale while remaining deeply personal in their meaning. The natural world becomes a witness to divine authority. The movements of the sun, moon, and stars are portrayed as signs of order rather than randomness, each following boundaries established by the Creator. Enoch repeatedly emphasizes that creation itself obeys God's commands without hesitation. It is humanity, not the universe, that struggles with obedience. By comparing the faithfulness of creation with the failures of human beings, the text quietly challenges readers to consider where true wisdom begins. Another remarkable feature of the Book of Enoch is its detailed interest in knowledge. Throughout his journey, Enoch receives explanations about the structure of the heavens, the courses of the heavenly lights, the changing seasons, and the rhythms that govern the natural world. Ancient readers understood these descriptions as evidence that the Creator had established an ordered universe governed by wisdom rather than chance. Modern scholars often debate how these passages should be interpreted, but there is broad agreement that they reveal an ancient desire to understand the relationship between heaven and earth. The visions are not presented as disconnected fragments. Instead, they form a single picture in which moral order, natural order, and divine authority are closely connected. Every part of creation reflects the wisdom of the one who established it. Every deviation from that order carries consequences. Every act of faithfulness participates in something far greater than the individual who performs it. By the closing sections of Enoch's journey, one truth becomes increasingly clear. The purpose of these revelations is not to encourage endless speculation about hidden mysteries, but to inspire confidence that history remains under God's control. Even when injustice appears to triumph, the text insists that the final outcome has already been determined by divine wisdom. The faithful are encouraged to endure, the proud are warned that their power is temporary, and every reader is reminded that the visible world is only one part of a much larger reality. Death, judgment, hope, and restoration are woven together into a single vision that stretches from the beginning of creation to its promised renewal. For that reason, the Book of Enoch has continued to capture attention across cultures and centuries. Whether read as an ancient religious work, a window into early Jewish thought, or a source that influenced later traditions, it invites readers to look beyond immediate circumstances and consider the possibility that every human life unfolds within a universe sustained by purpose, governed by justice, and directed toward a future that has never been outside the knowledge of God. As the final visions unfold, Enoch's attention is drawn away from the movements of nations and back toward the destiny of individual people. After witnessing the order of heaven, the rebellion of the Watchers, and the certainty of divine judgment, he is repeatedly reminded that every human life carries lasting significance. The text returns again and again to the idea that nothing escapes the knowledge of God. Acts of compassion are remembered. Acts of injustice are not forgotten. Hidden motives, private decisions, and public actions all exist within a reality that extends far beyond earthly history. This perspective gives the Book of Enoch a striking sense of continuity. The same divine authority that governs the stars is also concerned with the choices made by ordinary men and women. According to the visions, history is not divided into separate sacred and ordinary moments. Instead, every day becomes part of a larger account, moving steadily toward its appointed conclusion. Throughout these closing sections, Enoch also speaks of hope. Although much of the book contains warnings about corruption, violence, and coming judgment, those warnings are balanced by repeated promises that evil will not endure forever. The faithful are encouraged to remain steadfast even when justice seems delayed. The book insists that apparent silence should never be mistaken for absence. From Enoch's perspective, God's patience allows history to reach its proper fulfillment, but patience does not cancel accountability. This balance between mercy and justice shapes the entire work. Rather than presenting the future as uncertain, the text describes it as already held within divine wisdom. Human beings experience delays, confusion, and unanswered questions. Yet heaven is portrayed as moving according to a purpose that never loses direction. For ancient readers facing persecution or uncertainty, that message offered reassurance that faithfulness still mattered, even when immediate circumstances suggested otherwise. Another reason the Book of Enoch has continued to attract attention is its influence on later religious thought. Scholars have long observed similarities between some of its themes and ideas that appear elsewhere in early Jewish literature and parts of the New Testament. Concepts involving divine judgment, the gathering of the righteous, the punishment of rebellious spiritual beings, and the expectation of God's final kingdom all echo themes that were widely discussed during the centuries before and after the time of Jesus. This does not mean every tradition understood Enoch in exactly the same way, nor does it mean every community accepted the book as scripture. Its history is complex, with different religious traditions giving it different levels of authority. Yet its survival across so many centuries demonstrates that countless readers considered its message important enough to preserve with extraordinary care. The discovery of ancient fragments among the Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed that the work was already circulating many generations before the medieval manuscripts that later reached Europe, providing valuable insight into the religious world of the Second Temple period. Perhaps that enduring influence explains why the Book of Enoch continues to inspire discussion today. Historians examine it to better understand ancient Judaism. Biblical scholars study it to explore the background of early Christian writings. Archaeologists value the manuscript evidence that connects the text to communities living more than 2,000 years ago. Believers often read it alongside other ancient works to gain a deeper appreciation of how earlier generations understood God's justice, the unseen realm, and humanity's place within creation. Even where interpretations differ, one central theme remains remarkably consistent. The visible world is not presented as the whole of reality. According to Enoch's visions, history unfolds before a creator who knows its beginning and its end, whose purposes extend beyond the limits of human sight, and whose justice ultimately reaches every person. That conviction, more than any single vision or symbol, explains why the Book of Enoch has continued to fascinate readers across cultures, languages, and centuries. The Book of Enoch ends not with a celebration of hidden knowledge, but with a reminder that wisdom is measured by the way a person lives. After witnessing visions of heaven, the rebellion of the Watchers, the order of creation, and the certainty of divine judgment, Enoch's final message returns to a simple truth. Human life is temporary, but the choices made within it carry eternal significance. Throughout the text, righteousness is never described as secret information available only to a select few. Instead, it is portrayed as faithful obedience, humility before God, and confidence that justice will ultimately prevail even when the world appears filled with corruption. The extraordinary visions serve a larger purpose. They are intended to strengthen faith, encourage perseverance, and remind readers that history unfolds under the authority of a creator whose purposes remain constant across every generation. That emphasis explains why the Book of Enoch has continued to be read, discussed, and debated for centuries. Its lasting influence comes not only from its remarkable descriptions of the unseen realm, but also from its unwavering conviction that every human life matters within God's greater plan. The journey of this ancient book through history is almost as remarkable as the visions it contains. For many centuries, complete copies survived primarily within the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, where the text continued to be copied and preserved, while it became largely unknown in much of Europe. Interest grew dramatically during the 18th and 19th centuries, as manuscripts were brought to wider scholarly attention and translated into modern languages. The discovery of Enochic fragments among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century confirmed that the work was far older than many had previously assumed, demonstrating that it circulated widely during the Second Temple period. Those discoveries transformed academic understanding of ancient Jewish literature and provided important context for studying the religious environment in which early Christianity emerged. Although scholars continue to debate aspects of its composition, transmission, and interpretation, the historical significance of the Book of Enoch is no longer in doubt. It stands today as one of the most influential surviving works from the ancient Jewish world outside the Hebrew Bible. Perhaps the greatest lesson offered by Enoch is not found in a single vision, but in the pattern that unites them all. Again and again, the book contrasts order with rebellion, faithfulness with corruption, and hope with despair. The faithful angels remain obedient to God's commands, while the rebellious watchers experience the consequences of abandoning their appointed responsibilities. Human beings are presented with the same choice. They may pursue wisdom rooted in reverence for God, or they may follow paths that ultimately lead to destruction. Every vision reinforces this moral framework. The heavenly journeys, symbolic imagery, and prophetic warnings all point toward the conviction that divine justice is neither arbitrary nor delayed without purpose. Even when evil appears powerful, the Book of Enoch insists that history remains firmly under God's control and that the final outcome has already been determined by His righteousness. For modern readers, these themes continue to resonate because they speak to questions that have never disappeared. People still wonder whether justice will ultimately prevail, whether human actions truly matter, and whether history is moving toward a meaningful destination rather than unfolding through random events. The Book of Enoch answers those questions with remarkable confidence. It presents a universe governed by purpose, sustained by divine wisdom, and directed toward the restoration of righteousness. Whether approached as an ancient religious text, an important historical document, or a window into early Jewish thought, it challenges readers to look beyond the immediate concerns of daily life and consider the possibility that every moment exists within a far greater reality than human eyes can fully perceive. And so the journey returns to the weathered limestone entrance in the Ethiopian highlands where it began. The stone still bears the marks of countless generations. The scent of aged parchment and incense still lingers within the quiet churches that preserve these manuscripts through centuries of change. The ancient pages remain, carrying the same visions that inspired, challenged, and puzzled readers long before the modern world existed. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have changed. Scholars continue to study every fragment, every translation, and every surviving manuscript in search of deeper understanding. Yet the central message endures. Human history is not without direction. Justice is not forgotten. Wisdom is not hidden from those who sincerely seek it. The pages are still there, still preserved, still inviting every new generation to examine one of the most remarkable works ever to emerge from the ancient world and to reflect on the enduring questions it continues to place before humanity.